Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about genes and DNA. So what are genes? Genes are a segment of DNA that are on a chromosome and they control a particular trait. If you remember from our last video, traits are things like your hair color, your eye color, your blood type, your skin color, whether or not you have attached earlobes or unattached earlobes, the length of your fingers, the length of your toes, how large your feet are, how small they are. All these things are traits. Okay? And these traits are carried on genes in the DNA, and the genes determine what trait or what kind of thing you're going to have for each trait. So for instance, hair color, you have genes that control hair color. They determine whether or not you're going to have brown hair or blonde hair or red hair or black hair. So genes are basically little pieces of DNA that are on chromosomes and they control a particular trait. Genes are located on the chromosomes inside the nuclei. Each organism has a fixed number of chromosomes. Humans have 23 pairs or 46 chromosomes total. So 23 pairs of chromosomes. Other animals have different numbers. Other plants have different numbers. Okay, so DNA is in all living things, but humans have 23 pairs or 46 total. And then genetics is the study of how these traits are passed down from one generation to another. So what is DNA? DNA is a complex molecule. It's a polymer, and it's found in all living things. The primary function of DNA is to store and transmit genetic information. So it stores genetic information, and then it passes that genetic information down to offspring. And this genetic information tells your cells exactly how to function. All of your cells basically function by making proteins. And this DNA tells your cells exactly what proteins to make and when to make them and how to make them. So basically DNA controls your cells by telling it what proteins to make. DNA, if you don't know the structure of it, if you could take a little piece of DNA and blow it up to where you could actually see it, they believe it would look a little bit like a rope ladder that's been twisted. So if you take a ladder and you twist the ladder, that's what the DNA would end up looking like. Some trivia for you. The average cell nucleus is about 6 micrometers in diameter. That is smaller than the naked eye can see. And you can see it usually with microscopes. The total length of the DNA in the human genome is 1.8 meters. So if you took all of the DNA in a human and you stacked it end to end, it would be about 1.8 meters. It would almost be 2 meter sticks long. And in order to fit all that DNA, because if you think about it, DNA is super small. So the fact that you've got 2 meters of DNA inside of you means you've got a ton of it. In order to fit all of that into the nucleus of a cell, you actually have to coil it and super coil it, so it's coiled super tight together. So who was the first person that figured out that basically different things could be inherited, different traits could be inherited? That would be Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel worked in the 1800s. He was an Austrian monk, and he loved to study math and science. As a boy, he would like to try to predict what the color of the flowers would be in his father's garden when he crossbred 2 different plants there. And from being a boy kind of trying to predict what the colors of the flowers would be, he became curious, and he figured out that there was actually a connection between the parents and the offspring. And what he did was he studied pea plants. He studied the flowers of pea plants. And he noticed that some pea plants had white flowers and some had red. And what he noticed was when he would breed a pea plant with white flowers with a pea plant that had red flowers, he would get all different types of offspring with all different types of flowers. Some of the flowers of the offspring he found would be actually white. Some of the flowers he found would be red. And others he found would be actually pink. And so he figured out that there was a pattern between the parents' flowers and the children's flowers, and therefore the baby pea plants must be inheriting the colors from its parents. And he made very, very careful scientific observations, and he used scientific methods to discover this. And actually he discovered this in about 1856. So what is a gene? Well, inside the nucleus of a cell, we have chromosomes. Again, we have 23 pairs of them. Okay? Each pair has the same trait on the one chromosome as on the other. So if you have a pair of chromosomes, the one chromosome you get from your mother, the other one you get from your father, and those two chromosomes, that pair, has exactly the same genes or traits for the genes for the different traits on it as the other member of that pair. So a gene is basically material that controls which traits are going to be expressed or seen in an organism. Okay? Genes come in pairs, and as an offspring, you inherit one copy from your mother and one copy from your father, and they work together to determine what kind of traits you're going to have. What is an allele? Guys, an allele is basically one of these genes showing one of the traits. So basically, if you had a gene for hair color, an allele would be if you had a brown hair color gene on your genes, that would be your allele. Or a blonde hair color genes on your gene, that would be your allele. For our purposes, guys, don't let this confuse you. For 8th grade science and genetics, if you think of an allele as being the same thing as a gene, as them being exactly the same, you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay. So here is basically a picture or a drawing, a representation of the 23 chromosomes that a human being has. Let's look at chromosome pair number 1. In pair number 1, you get one of these strands from your mother. You get one of the strands from your father. They have genes for the exact same traits on them. So for instance, in spot number 1 up here, the first gene up here might be a gene for hair color, and you get that gene from your mother. Up here on the other side, you get this gene from your father, and it's also for hair color. Down here in this spot down here, you might have a gene for eye color that you get from your father, and over here you have a gene for eye color that you get from your mother. So in this pair of chromosomes, all of the genes, the traits, are exactly the same. The alleles, though, may be different. For instance, gene number 1 up here we said was hair color. From your mother, you might get a brown-haired allele. So she would be passing you a brown-haired gene. From your father, you might be getting a blonde-haired allele. So he might be passing you a blonde-haired gene. The two of these are going to work together to determine what your hair color would be. And we'll talk in the next video about how they work together. Eye color down here, we said these were the genes or for the trait of eye color. Your father may be passing you a blue eye colored allele. Your mother may be passing you a brown eye colored allele. And those two alleles will work together to determine what your eye color will be. And that would be just this pair of chromosomes. And there's thousands of actually genes on here for different traits. Anything from eye color, hair color, blood type, skin color, how hairy you are, whether or not you have long ears or short ears, a long nose or a short nose, stubby fingers or long fingers, big fat big toes or skinny little big toes. You have thousands of traits on here. And again, you get one possibility from your mother and the other from your father, and they work together to determine what that trait will be. The second set of chromosomes has different traits on them. The third set has thousands of other traits on them. The fourth set has thousands of other traits on them, all the way up to the 22nd pair. Now, guys, the traits that are on these chromosomes are exactly the same in every human being up through the 22nd pair. Okay? So, for instance, eye color, hair color, skin color, hairiness, ear length, the shape of your eyes, whether or not you're genetically prone to certain diseases, all those traits on these different chromosomes are the same for all human beings up to the 22nd chromosome, or the 22nd pair. The difference in human beings comes in the 23rd pair. If you're a girl, in the 23rd pair, you get 2 X chromosomes, okay? And then you have different traits on those for being a girl. Okay? That helps develop female organs and makes you basically a girl. If you're a guy, you get the X and Y chromosome passed down to you from your parents, and then you have the traits on here that actually make you a guy. So all the way through the 22nd pair, for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of traits All the traits are the same between boys and girls. When you get to the 23rd pair, this is the set that has traits on it that determine whether or not you're going to have female characteristics or whether or not you have male characteristics. Okay? So really, males and females are very similar all the way up to this last set of chromosomes. This last set of chromosomes determines gender type traits.